Welcome back. We have an episode today. We're going to go over the center fielders. I have a really nice list here of talented dudes. I'm really excited to talk about. Shortstop center fielders are always beasts. So I'm going to start with the honorable mention. I think I just want to kind of point out how good of a season Jason Dominguez has, a young buck. He's been in Miami, and I know sometimes teams don't check on those fifth place teams quite as much, so some of their players get a little less credit. But unless they're doing better in the standings, and then they get more of the spotlight, just kind of like real life. Jason Dominguez has been a three-WAR right fielder who can probably play center field for most teams. Like I said, anyone who's kind of qualified enough to play center field, I'm going to put them in the center field rankings, because it's such a tough position to play. So if you're good enough to play there, that's where I have him. He has played right field this year, but yeah, he's a guy that's hit over 30 home runs as a 23-year-old switch hitter that has 75 speed, can steal a lot of bases. He had 16 this year, could probably steal close to 25 or 30 depending on the year, depending on the opponent catchers and the divisions. He does play in a division with Real Mutu and Romo, a couple other guys that have just monster arms in the NL, so he'd probably steal a lot of bases and when he wasn't in a division where he's not playing against so many high-end catchers with strong arms. But yeah, just a beast, an absolute talented freak. Always in real life, he's superstar hyped up as a big-time toolsy guy. So just want to kind of point out him at the bottom of the list there, and didn't quite crack the top 12 here. I think we have maybe 13, 14 on our list here. Next up was Brandon Marsh. So that, to go back a few seconds there, what I said about top 14, top 15, that's kind of a good barometer. I like kind of thinking like there's probably only about top 15 really legit center fielders, and when I say that, I mean a guy that can get over 2 WAR for you. There's a lot of guys that kind of have like a 40 bat, 65, 70 range. They can survive out there. They can give you 1 WAR, maybe a 1.7 WAR. Kind of like, obviously, it's above replacement level since the fact they're playing center field. But so it kind of makes it seem like it's a nice little threshold where it's like the top half of the league center fielders when you make like a top 14, 15 list. So Dominguez is right around there, which shows how talented he is at 23 years old. Brandon Marsh is a guy that's just one of the best base stealers I've ever seen. Absolutely insane base stealer. Can't remember too many guys ever that didn't have like 80 speed, 75 speed, that can just steal this many bases, not get caught. The best base runner in all of baseball. He has an 80 base running rating and 80 stealing rating and 70 speed. And almost nobody I've ever seen on TLG has had over like a 4.5 UBR season. I started adding that stat. I saw someone else, I think PF Holden on YouTube using that. I really like the UBR rating. If you don't have that in your views, dude can steal bases at crazy level. I think last year he was at 33-0 at one point, and then got caught a couple times in the last few weeks of the season. And then this year is like almost the same, just ridiculous ratios. So that's a huge, huge, huge quality to have in a guy that hits high up in your lineup. Get a single and all of a sudden move over to third, pretty much turn singles into doubles and triples. So even if that ISO's low, kind of plays like he's like a 250 ISO guy just with how many times he can move over on the base pass. So just a beast. Hit double-digit home runs, can almost hit 20 home runs. Hits 275, back-to-back really stellar seasons. So really, really solid. When you first look at him, you wouldn't stand out like that if you kind of just give a really quick glance and see the contact power. It's kind of like, he's like an average 6'5 center fielder, 45 bat. You'd think he'd probably be like a 2-WAR player, but that base running and some other things just add so much value. He seems to hit a little better than his ratings, probably because he's such a good runner, base runner, and so much speed. And I was just gonna say he probably has a high BABIP. I haven't really looked, but yeah, his BABIP historically has always been high. That's no coincidence how good of a runner he is. So he definitely just plays above those ratings, just based on how awesome and refined the rest of his game is. Next up, we have Pete Armstrong, who ranks as the number 12 out of 30 starting center fielders in baseball. Pete Armstrong probably could be a tad higher in this list. I think I was kind of debating having him at like 7, 8. This group is as you'll see, very, very close. So there's not really a huge difference in the ratings between like 7 and 12. You definitely have a big group at the top like 5 studs, and then you get like kind of like 6 to 10 are pretty big bats, and then you have like a lot of defensive specialists with 45, 50 bats from like 10 to 14. So Armstrong's kind of in that third tier of like the guys that have 50 bats. But then super rangy, so he probably could be a couple spots higher. Just the fact that he is probably maybe the second best defensive center fielder, the best defensive center fielder in baseball. Dude has incredible range out there. I did have him drop to 70 range, but he's back up to 75. So he had 6 zone range this season. But I thought it might have legitimately dropped because he did have a lot higher zone range last season. So I thought maybe he was losing a tad bit of range. But yeah, it just kind of goes up and down for the year. He did have 7, only 90 games this year. So I think it is a range just drops off so early. Like, guy's only 24 years old and he can already go down to 70 or 65 range. It's just crazy how tough it is to have keep that elite range. That's why it's just so insane. A guy like Andrelton Simmons at shortstop, but Pete Armstrong, yeah, absolutely is one of the elite defensive center fielders in baseball. Just whether he can keep that the big difference between a +3 or +4 zone range guy and a +15. Once you get up to those double-digit zone range, you get a guy that's just crazy out there stealing balls. So it'll be interesting to see how his zone range does in the next couple of years if he really does stay in that super elite tier. Another guy that kind of fits the same description is Pache. Pache is a guy that had that crazy range also, and really similar 50 bat. His bat's a little better than Pete Armstrong, which is why he's just a spot higher on the list. He can steal a ton of base, has crazy athleticism, one of the best natural athletes in baseball, and just 6'2", looks like a wide receiver that runs a 4.4 out there. Just crazy. Had a bunch of power too. He had 15 home runs last year, 10 home runs this year. Strikes out mid-20s. Has a little bit of a low ISO. Surprised not a tad higher with how much gap power he has. It's probably something to do with that stadium, not hitting as many home runs. I'm sure if he was in my stadium, he'd hit it closer to 20. But yeah, just a guy that had 2.5 on pace, 2.9 WAR, 5 last year, a couple big seasons early on. So guy that's just been a consistent contributor. That's always a really positive player. So I thought he might be a bit higher, but then I realized there's some really high-end center fielders on this list. Before I started doing this list, I thought he would probably rank as high as 4 or 5 on this list, but when I really broke it down, there's some absolute stud center fielders in TLG, so it's no slight on him at all. Urbina is a guy that I kind of figured he was really close to Pete Armstrong. I did give Urbina the nod just because it seemed like his bat was quite a bit better. When I looked at it and I thought about it quite a bit, I thought the range was pretty similar. They both had 70 and 75 range, both really good runners, but it just seemed like Urbina, ratings-wise, has a little bit, just that extra little gap power and contact rating. As you can see here in Oakland, which is a tough hitter's park, hit for a 150 ISO. He's really young too, 24 years old. I think he could have some huge seasons. He also had that 11% walk rate, which really stood out to me. Figured that I was really legitimate, and then he had a 9 and a 9 these last 2 years. And as you can see, his ISO was 50 points higher this season, and he stole 20 bases. And he's a super, super good base runner. And he had that 4.6 WAR year, 3.5. So, again, that's how really tight that is, between him and Pete Armstrong and a couple of those guys. So it's really nitpicky, but so I had him in 11. That was the reason I gave him a little bit of a bump. Grisham, I had as a top 10 guy. He's number 10 on this list. It's where you start getting into the real talents here. Grisham has this is the difference where I talked about that 5 to 10 tiers, those bigger bats. They're closer to 65 range, not quite the defensive specialist some of those other guys I just mentioned are, but still really solid center field there. He is a monster with a bunch of different things. His eye's monstrous. His base running's awesome. His stealing is really good. He only got caught once. As you can see, he's kind of like a Brandon Marsh, where he has those really good ratios, just doesn't quite steal as much. Only a 45 speed guy. I don't know if that was a little bit higher a year or two ago, but also just really big power bat, 20 home run power. That's why he got that monster contract. It's 7-year big time deal there over almost 200 million, I guess. Just a really, really, really talented dude. And Toronto has a really good bat. It's really rare to have a center fielder with a bat like that. There's probably a top talent in the league for years to come too. He is 29, so he should have a bunch of really good years. And his bat's good enough to transition in the corner if he does jump down to 55 or 60 range out there. Taylor Trammell is a really similar player. Also has that huge bat as Grisham. I rewarded him just because he's been so consistent. He's a captain, high leadership work ethic, really good runner, really good speed, really good eye. So just a really similar profile to Grisham. I kind of thought about it for a few minutes who I should have ahead. I just figured Trammell's just been so good for so long. That was kind of one of the nods. Like I said, there's no exact criteria for this list. Mainly it's not what they've done in the past, but if it's a pretty close tiebreaker, I kind of took that in consideration. As you can see, he's just so consistent over the years. Had a 5 WAR, 4.5 WAR seasons, and then 3, 4. Just always been such a good ball player. Always is such a good contact hitter with his bat pip. As you can see, just for some reason, even though he has that 50 contact, he just plays like it's a lot better. He always plays like a 350 bat pip with that speed. So it just seems like his OPS is always higher than his ratings would indicate, because the only real huge standout tools that I know I don't value gap power quite as highly as the other categories. Contact, home run power, and I are the big ones for me. But he really does, that gap power doesn't hurt for sure. double-digit, not just double-digit, but 20 home run type seasons over and over. So had a little bit of down year last year with only 10 home runs, but had a ton of doubles. As you can see, the ISO was actually higher last season. Oh, yeah, right. Sorry. It was only 72 games. That's why I was mistaken. So it probably would have been right around 20 home runs again. So just, model consistency. Really, really solid player at number 9. And then at number 8, we got Victor Robles. Robles also has that huge bat. Huge. As you can see, all these center fielders are just such crazy base runners and stealers. Robles has been in right field because Boston's absolutely loaded, but he is a top 10 center fielder in the league for any other team. It's a 65 range, 75 cannon arm. If you don't know, Boston's ballpark is monstrous in right field. If you go to info and then you go to ballpark and you see, obviously, you just get that if you see right center, there's a 420 feet. They got that weird ass thing. So I know, like Tyler always says, pretty much that right field is just another center fielder there. So really designed that way. So it's, even though he's in right field, the value he has at center field is immense. He would be a center fielder for pretty much any other team minus the top couple guys there. Just a crazy plus hit tool. Another guy that has that crazy high bat pip. 362 this year in a career year. 5 WAR season. Only 10 home runs this year, but 320 batting average. I think he's right up there for the batting title this year in the AL. So just an amazing, amazing player. Could probably have him a few spots higher, but this is where you get the run on Red Sox. This is one of the main reasons the Red Sox are as special as they are. I have them as having number 7, 7, 8, 9 center fielders in baseball, all in the same team, which is crazy. 3 top 10 center fielders. Bogan's next up on the list. I'd put him one spot above Robles just because the power difference. Also a really rangy guy, also a really good runner, also has that pretty good contact. It's only 50, but with that avoid K, it plays up and all that power. So his 50 contact, but he actually hits quite a bit better. It's hitting 270, hit 277 that season. Doesn't strike out that much, doesn't hit into a ton of double plays, has crazy ISO, so just a really monstrous bat and defense and running combo. One of the most complete players in baseball, and like I said, since he doesn't strike out a lot, if you get that combination of 60 home run power and 60 avoid, they just hit a lot of home runs because they're only striking out 17-18% of the time with so much power. So in 600 appearances, they're just always going to hit 25-30 home runs sometimes, those guys with that combination. So I know Didi Gregorius always had a combo and had more home runs than I always anticipated. So it's just an awesome talent. Dan Bogan's wrote a cool story. And then next we have Corbin Carroll. Corbin Carroll is up here because his range has gone up. In the last little bit, he just keeps slowly improving. He's 26 years old, and his power has jumped from 35 to 40 to 45. So he's a legit guy that has double-digit home run power, but then his range has gone from 70 to 75. So it really puts him in that top tier. He's actually got the higher range last time I looked than Pete Crow Armstrong. About the same zone range there, 6 as Pete Crow. But yeah, he's just an unbelievable athlete. The best base stealer in baseball, led the league 2 years in a row. Well, him and Brandon Marsh, I guess. Led the league in stealing 2 years in a row with the red ink there. Hitting him right around 300, double-digit home runs. Strikes out about 15% of the time this year, only 13 last year, and has that plus OPS plus every year. So when you're that elite on the base pass, that elite in center field, and you got a 123 WRC plus, what an incredible talent. Probably a little better than I think a lot of people might realize. He definitely can make a case he's a top 20 player in all baseball. He's that elite, and he just got a really nice extension. Really reasonable contract, smart one for Boston there, getting him at 6'11", probably expect him to opt out after that because I'd say his value is pretty close to pretty much a $30 to $35 million a year type guy. I know Mookie Betts makes $40 million a year, and a bunch of those big power guys 6 WAR guys make 25, 30. So I think if he hits free agency in 3 years at the middle of his prime there, 28, 29 years old, he'd probably be worth about $25 million a year over 6, 7 years, kind of at least what Trent Grisham and those guys got last year, that guy for the Cubs, Nick Senzel, not even a center fielder, those corner guys, making $30 million a year, almost $25 million a year for 7 years. So Carroll's gonna be a really good value where Tyler's got him locked up there for about $30 million for 3 years, and that's pretty much what he's worth per year, I'd say. So really, really, really talented dude, and just been a monster piece in the middle there for Boston. One of the reasons they have such a good defense every year. So we got Corbin Carroll there as the top of the 3 Red Sox. We got Robles, Bogan, and Carroll, all pretty tightly grouped. That's the reasons I gave, kind of the reasons why I have each above each other, but they're pretty dang close. All really, really good bats. Next up, we have Jarred Kelenic. He gets the nod over the Boston boys because he is just as rangy as them. Not quite as rangy as the guy we just talked about there, Carroll, but his bat is so monstrous. He's that huge 60 home run power, but then the contact is so much higher than all the other center fielders we showed so far. I don't think anyone's had over 60 until Carroll has 65, but he has 70 contact, and then plus he has the power, plus he has the base running and the stealing, and he has the defense. So just one of the most complete players in baseball. And again, he's on a team that doesn't make the playoffs the last few years in Seattle. Just with that rebuilding phase they've had, a tough couple of years, but they're starting to really collect a lot of high draft picks, and he looks like he's going to be a Mariner for a long time with that contract. And it's really hard to trade a guy like that because it's really hard to get equal value in return when they're so talented. Even if you get like 5 guys for one, it's just brings so much value to a ball club. Should be a Seattle Mariner for life, but we'll see. What an absolute monster there. Next up, we have, this was a tough one for me. I actually put Kjerstad above Kelenic, even though Kelenic has such a better approach. Kjerstad's 70 power really stands out to me. That's just such a deal breaker there when it's a close battle with other guys. The difference between 60 and 70 power is so immense. It's just crazy. There's the fact he's just as good defensively and even like just good or even better of a runner than Kelenic and a couple of those guys. Kjerstad, just with that 70 power center field, is so rare. Again, he's playing left field because they have Drew Jones in center, who also has like 75 range. But Kjerstad would be a center fielder on almost any other team. Kansas City's the same as Boston, where that left field's huge, almost like another center fielder out there. So he just has so much range in left field, so much power, so much ISO. It's just a true superstar in baseball. Kansas City has a guy that's hit a 150 ISO as a rook, and then it's been 250 all 3 years after that. Just 38, 35, 33 home runs. Crazy over 20 steals each season. So just been a dude that's already put up 20 WAR, pretty close to it. Just an amazing pick. What a crazy career he's on pace to have at only 27 years old. Should have another 5 at least really high end years. So a really, really good dude. That dude ranks number 5. And then number 4 we have Zion Banister. Banister gets the nod over Kjerstad because his power is almost the same. He's also super rangy. He's got a little bit better range. Kjerstad and a little higher end on the approach end of things. So that was a big difference. I think Kjerstad was like a 45 in these categories, where Banister's almost as good at everything else, but then he's a 60 here and a little more rangy. So it's just in that really, just in a tiny tier above Kjerstad. It's really close because of that 70 power, but also 65 power. It's just both those guys, you're just, again, splitting hairs. Banister, also is a switch hitter. So there's just so many things he brings to the table. 80 steals almost 40 bases this season. He's on pace for over that. And he's still probably hitting quite a bit under what his talent level is. He's 60 contact, 60 avoid, 60 eye, big power, and crazy athleticism with a high BAP hit. So it's another one of those guys that should be hitting way better than he is. He's only hitting 265. So yeah, I'd expect him to have a 300 season again like he did last year, next year, and probably could have a monstrous like MVP type season. All these guys are kind of MVP candidates at the top here. How good they are. Any of these last few guys we go over could easily have like 7 WAR. Banister's, yeah, a guy that keep my eye on as one of the most talented players in baseball for sure. Next up, we have Ronald Acuna Jr. I put Acuna as a center fielder because he's been playing right field for quite a few years now. But again, what I mentioned in the last video too is the criteria is anyone that could play center field that's talented enough to do it. I'm going to rank them as a center fielder here. That's a legit guy. He's a guy that's a legitimate center fielder at 65 range, crazy athleticism, 65 speed, big time runner, big time arm, big time error rating, easily play like 55, 60 center field. So he's actually in the center field rankings, not the corners. In real life, plays quite a bit of center field too. Guy has a crazy bat. And these top 3 guys, I don't have to go over for too much. Kind of like I said with Soto yesterday, when they're this elite, might as well just, obviously everyone knows them, so just give him a few seconds on screen here and move on. One of the best players in baseball, top 10 guy. Just a crazy, crazy WAR totals. I think he's on pace for a surefire Hall of Fame career. Already at 54 WAR at the age of 28. Should be a guy that could challenge like 75, 80 WAR in his career. Just an amazing, amazing talent. And then next up, we have Cody Bellinger at number 2. Cody Bellinger is one of the best players of all time in TLG. They always seem to make his ratings crazy. Cody Bellinger is so nasty. I had a lot of this top tier really too is another this top 3 tiers, another separation. As good as Banister and Kjerstad and Kelenic are, I think Acuna, Bellinger, and obviously Trout next are just another tier above that. Those 3 are just so insane. I gave Bellinger the nod over Acuna, probably a little bit for a career accomplishment thing. Like obviously right now they're pretty close, but I still think Bellinger's just a tinsy bit better just because it's such insane power. His base stealing's still there. His range is still there. He's got that awesome mentals. He also is a captain. So he's he's got so many things. And yet again, we just don't really have to explain how good he is. Mike Trout, number one. Mike Trout is the greatest player in history in TLG. He has had such a ridiculous career. He's already at 121 career WAR. He is not falling off at all. He's still walking 18% of the time. He's been 2018 the last 4 years, or last 3 years, I guess. The dude has everything you look for in a baseball player. He's a plus defender. He hasn't lost any range yet, which is the craziest part about this. He's 35 years old. He's got 65 range. He's putting up unbelievably positive zone wars almost every single season. He's been 2.5. He's down to 0, so maybe that's just really like picky. Like the difference between 2 and 0 is pretty minor. But yeah, he has 9 outfield assists, so he still has the ability to throw guys out. I know in the old out of the park games, he used to only have like 45 arms, but they've upped that. Seems like gave him a 50-55 arm in the last few games. So still has the arm strength, still has the range, still has the eye, still has the power. His contact is the only thing that's gone down a little bit. It was 65, then it was 60, and now it's 55. So it might be just the first thing showing us a little bit of signs of regression. I wouldn't be surprised if he was down to 55 or 50 range after a year or two. It's just nobody can really keep that range once they get to the high 30s. Like that's just so old. It's really cool. We'll see if he can stick in center field for another season or two. I expect by the age of 37, 38, he'd have to transition to the corner. I know Gamma taught him in right field because he does have plus arms. He can actually play right field, not just left field. What an amazing baseball player. Just so cool to see what he's accomplished and where he's going to end up in this all-time WAR list because he's still chugging out these 7, 8 WAR seasons even at his age. These two are combined, so it's like 10, 9, 8, 8, 7. So it's just amazing what he's done. So that's it for the rankings. This was a pretty nasty loaded class at center field. You really get the couple tiers like I talked about. Those top 5 guys are so good. Trout, Bellinger, Acuna, Banister, Kjerstad, Kelenic, top 6. And then you get the 3 Boston boys, Carroll, Bogan, Robles. And then you get that next kind of tier down where you get the big bats that are like the 60-65 range guys where you get Trammell, Grisham. I forgot to rank my own boy, Joe Adell. I had him in there, but for some reason I just skipped him. I got everyone else. There's no reason for that. It's a coincidence. I happened to miss my own guy. I had Adell ranked right at the 12 spot, I think, right around where Grisham and Trammell were. I probably had him a bit too low just based on the bad season he's had. He's only got about 3 WAR this year, not even like 2.5. Hit really bad in Houston at the start of the year, one of the reasons for their slow start, but I trust his talent and gave him a big time extension. His bat's so crazy. He's got 65 power, 65 range, and 60 contact. So I'd say he's got the potential to be right up there at like as high as like 5 or 6. He kind of bounces back next season. Pretty much the same profile as Heston Kjerstad, which I ranked at like number 5. So yeah, I think Adell is one of the more talented dudes, but he has had a down year, so I penalized him a little bit for that and just had him right in between Grisham and Trammell there at like number 10. So that's my list for center fielders, and now we're just got catchers and DHs left, and then the pitchers. So that'll be it for this episode. Cheers.